John, these students in Melbourne striking next week in support of Palestine. I have to say most of them couldn't even find Israel on a map, but there they are. They'll all be out there. This looks to me like yet another recruitment drive from the Greens, and I suspect the only thing they're going to learn at these protests is how to be anti-Semitic.
That's right, Peter. These are children being used as pawns by adults. Full credit to the Federal Labor Education Minister, Jason Clare, who today said in Parliament it should be uncontroversial that children should be in school. He was supported by Sarah Henderson, the Liberal Shadow Education Minister. But here in Victoria, and Peter Dutton mentioned this in your program earlier today, Jacinta Allen has refused to condemn the protests. She said there's nothing that can be done. She said this is about democracy. Well, it's not about democracy when you recruit young people to sprout vile anti-Semitic slurs, and sadly, that is most likely what's going to happen at these protests, and the Victorian government has been nowhere to be seen on this.
I tell you, Nick Cater, this is the model that the left has used so comprehensively on climate change. They indoctrinate, they mobilise, they recruit, and then it follows through until these kids are eventually voters. They've done it on this issue and they're going to keep doing it. And of course, we saw it with the Aboriginal issue for many years. It didn't work for them on the issue of the referendum recently. I mean, that was overwhelmingly rejected, but they're not helped by the media. And you've picked up how the BBC sold Australia overseas, haven't you?
Yeah, the BBC ran a programme recently supposedly explaining what had happened in the Voice referendum, but instead of talking to perhaps some of the 9.4 million people who voted no, they brought on 4 experts who were all sort of not at all sympathetic with the no case. This is what happens, and as a result of that, you get an entirely distorted picture of the real arguments, of the truth. And I think this is what young people unfortunately suffer because you don't get you cannot understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in all its complexity and nuance simply by watching something on TikTok. And yet that's how most of these people get their news. So I think it's much better they should be in school, perhaps learning their history, learning more about the Holocaust, that defining event of the 20th century, before they start jumping to conclusions and backing the wrong side.
John, I know you're not long back from London. The UK, or former UK Home Secretary Suella Braverman, was sacked by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. She's now issued a 3-page statement. It's quite extraordinary. I urge people at home to read it. She says that Sunak has manifestly failed to deliver on his promises to reduce migration, to stop the boats, and stamp out radical gender ideology in schools. I think she's spot on. I think Sunak is weak. I thought she gave a terrific speech in the US recently where she just said, the issues of integration are a huge problem for the UK. But what did you make of the extraordinary events in the last 48 hours?
Well, Peter, Suella Braverman was sacked not for being wrong, but for being right, and by talking about the things the British establishment want to sweep under the carpet. So when she accused the police of double standards against anti-lockdown protesters, against women who were protesting against what police officers had done to women, versus the Palestinian protests in London, no one said she was wrong. They just said she shouldn't have spoken it out loud. Rishi Sunak is Great Britain's answer to Malcolm Turnbull. He is taking the Tories to the left. He is refusing to address the issues of mainstream concern to Tory voters, to voters throughout the UK. He wasn't selected by the party membership. He's won no popular vote. And every prediction is that when the election in the UK comes in less than a year, the Tories are going to get wiped out, and the future will be people like Suella Braverman speaking the truth.
And I might add too, the bloke he's brought back in charge of the Foreign Affairs portfolio, which we'll touch on Brexit is the guy who wanted to remain. Gents, thank you for your time. Nick Cater there and John Roscombe.